Hey guys, Gen Z dating sucks. Apparently.
Situationship.
Gen Z's commitment issues.
Sick of the dating apps.
Where are the good women at?
Ghosting culture has gotten so out of hand.
I am so sick of guys asking you out and then you never hear from them again.
I decided that I'm lonely.
I'm sick of playing the field.
But is it actually as bad as people say? Has dating gotten worse over the decades? Or has dating always been the same? Hard, regardless of what generation you're in. I mean, I guess we can ask the silent generation. Ah yes, the 1950s. Milkshakes, drive-in movie theaters, diners. I think the craziest thing about dating during this time period is that people, without irony, look back and call this the golden era of dating. And I'm like, what? Golden for who? To its credit, this era did establish a lot of the traditional dating values people want to see in the Western world today. For example, as a man in the 50s, you're expected to do everything. You're supposed to be the initiator and the provider. Huh? Say that again? You spotted a cute girl from across the diner. Well, you better pull up your bootstraps and walk over there, playa, cause you're the one who has to make the first move. As a 1950s man, you're supposed to plan the date, pay for the date, and lead the date from start to finish. Nah, dating at this time was insane because on one hand, you do have the opening doors, walking on the outside of the sidewalk, putting your jacket over a puddle so her shoes don't get dirty, you know, cutesy, chivalry, gentlemanly things. And on the other hand, only one gender was really in control here. As a 1950s woman, your role in dating was primarily passive. You have to wait to be approached. And if you're impatient and try to make the first move, you're seen as being too forward and will be seen as unattractive. Speaking of unattractive, the pressure and standard to look beautiful was likely the highest of any generation to come after it. Because now that you're a sitting duck hoping to be approached, you have to go above and beyond to make yourself look approachable. Independence? Yeah, let's throw that out the window. There are literal magazines on how to get a husband and how to be a good housewife, and you could just tell the time period that we're in when rule number one is don't talk. As a woman of the silent generation, your identity was tied to how well you complement a man's existence and how good you were at showing traits that you would make a good wife and mother. You see, in Gen Z's world, dating has evolved to a point where it's seen as more casual, for better or for worse. It's common for Gen Z to go on a date with no real end goal in mind other than, having fun in the moment or temporarily satisfying your romantic/sexual needs. However, that did not fly back in the 50s. Casual dating wasn't a thing because back then, dating was only seen as a path to marriage. So much so that they made up the term going steady, which in today's lingo just means being exclusive. Sure, like Gen Z, it was normal to date multiple people at once, but ultimately, it was with the goal of finding a lifelong partner to commit to. There was a societal pressure for people, especially women, to get married young. And it's wild to think that as a woman, if you didn't get married before 25, people looked at you like you were the problem. But that's not to say that the men of the silent generation did not have societal pressure either. Men were also taught what it meant to be a good man or a good husband. Namely, don't be broke. Are you able to provide for a future family? Then why are you dating, dum-dum? Was the sentiment every man faced in the 50s. Which makes sense, unfortunately. Since marriage was the end goal for most couples, if you couldn't afford to sustain one, it doesn't make sense to start. The problem is, though, this tied a lot of men's romantic worth to their wallet and their work ethic. Same thing applied to your ability to lead and to take charge. You were taught to take initiative while being confident in every decision you made. Being awkward, unsure, or seen as weak in any way made you look less desirable and unattractive, meaning men of this generation were more likely to put forth more effort to learn how to be more appealing to women. Not to mention this is the same generation of men raised by people who fought in World War I. Boys were often raised with the mentality of soldiers. Never show emotion, never cry, never share your feelings, or do anything that makes you look soft. Since this was the standard idea of what a man should be, many women had that expectation when looking for a romantic partner. And despite the many issues the silent generation unknowingly faced while dating, the main caveat was that it seemed like society at the time had a strict set of rules that everyone just happened to decide to follow. Pretty much everyone was on the same page as to what they were looking for out of a relationship, albeit at the expense of, freedom, I'm sure the pressure of marrying young and having a limited dating pool to choose from led to many unhappy marriages. But hey, at least there was some sort of structure. However, what happens when a future generation ignores this structure entirely? Ah yes, the 60s/70s. Roller skating, disco, ice cream shops. Baby boomers, when it came to dating, were an interesting case. Boomers are often blamed for a lot of things wrong with society, but hey, we gotta give credit where it's due. Oh, sorry, I got a text message. Boomers deserve no credit, but you know who does. The sponsor of today's video, Aura. Mom, what? Thank you, Aura, for sponsoring this video. Have you ever had random numbers call you for no reason? You pick up because you're curious, and it's the 10th time they've called you about your car's extended warranty, and you're just like, no, you idiot. I'm from New York. I don't own a car. Yeah, that happens to me at least twice a week. And that's because data brokers are making billions of dollars selling your personal data without your consent and making zero effort to make sure scammers and spammers don't get it. Hey, but that's where Aura comes in to save the day. With Aura, you can protect your privacy and personal information by finding these data brokers selling your info on your behalf, automatically removing you from these sites and keeping you off. And you're probably thinking, but Tyreek, there are other services to offer the same thing. What makes Aura so different? You get alerts if any of your personal data is found on the dark web, including your social security number. Not only does it also give you a secure VPN included, but antivirus software and a passenger manager, along with $5 million in identity theft protection. Hey, I don't want to leave myself vulnerable, and if you don't either, try Aura free for 14 days using my link aura.com/Tyreek Simmons and click the first link in the description to try Aura for free for 2 weeks. Boomers. If there's one thing boomers got right during dating, it was relaxing the traditional gender roles a bit and socially allowing more freedom when it came to finding a partner. One of the bigger issues for the silent generation was that since society was so strict, and this was a time where you can only meet someone new face to face, people had limited options to choose the right partner and often felt stuck in marriages they know they wouldn't be in if they had more choice. However, the boomers have changed that philosophy over time. Enter the sexual revolution of the 1960s. By 1960, the birth control pill became FDA approved and widely available. In the last generation, a casual sexual relationship was unheard of, and having one outside the context of a marriage was a big no-no. But with this new technological advancement, society felt more comfortable with the idea of a passionate fling with no real expectation for more. And it wasn't just birth control that fueled this revolution. Elvis's erotic dancing and suggestive lyrics, the Beatles' Beatlemania and their female fanbase's open physical attraction to them, Rolling Stones' Let's Spend the Night Together, and you know, it literally being a song about a one-night stand, and even movies like The Graduate, Love Story, and Last Tango in Paris became mainstream media and normalized casual, erotic, and passionate sexual expression outside of a marriage. So much so that certain songs were literally banned off radio stations during the 60s. I guess the silent gen could not let that slide. But this was done in vain, as this messaging was already everywhere. And in the context of dating, the idea of casual relationships for baby boomers became less stigmatized. And let's not forget, this was also the time where second wave feminism and the women's liberation movement was on the rise. So gender dynamics were also beginning to shift with the rest of culture. In 1969, no-fault divorces, a law which allowed a spouse to end a marriage without having to prove the other spouse did something wrong first, came into effect, meaning it was easier to leave unsafe or unwanted marriages. Women entered higher education and the workforce in larger numbers, giving them more autonomy and choice of when they want to pursue a serious relationship. And with this autonomy came flexibility. Tradition didn't go away entirely, as men were still seen as the breadwinners and the pursuers. But it did become less stigmatized for women to be more forward when it came to dating, gaining more control of the dynamic than her grandmother ever could, and take more of an equal role when it came to pursuing a relationship. And more importantly, take the pressure of early commitment out of dating. During the 60s and especially the 70s, you had the freedom to date without needing to think of marriage. Well, not right away at least. However, this level of freedom didn't just come with sunshine and rainbows. Like most things, it was a double-edged sword. The more you gain in autonomy, the less you keep in structure and stability. Have you ever been in a situation where you're getting to know someone, maybe even dating for some time? You're both obviously romantically interested in each other, but for some reason, neither person is clear on where your dynamic stands? Like, you're in a situation where you're not quite friends, but y'all definitely aren't in a serious romance either? Damn, if only there was a concrete name for such a situational relationship. But for the baby boomers of the 60s and 70s, this was becoming more of a common dilemma. As more people dated casually, less people were able to find the emotional connection and security they desired. This was still a transitionary period where old traditional expectations clashed with new values and freedoms. One person might be going into a dating scenario looking for monogamous exclusivity and emotional attachment. The other might just want to have fun in the moment, unsure if they want to commit to anything other than that. Both engage in a sexual relationship because it's seen as normal now, but the one assuming this will lead to a long-term commitment often gets heartbroken and feeling betrayed. A lot of relationships felt confusing. Passion without commitment or stability. Intimacy became easier to access but harder to actually mean something. Silent genders dated for courtship, while boomers dated for self-exploration, and some people might have been hurt because of it. As a result, and of course amongst other things, baby boomers became the first generation to normalize divorce on a massive scale, skyrocketing in the 1970s. But what happens when a generation is raised with divorce and sexual freedom being the norm? Ah yes, the 80s and 90s. Clubs, malls, pagers to text your crush. Gen Xers grew up in a pretty funny time where technology and media weren't fully there yet. I mean, obviously when compared to Gen Z, but the use of it was on the rise and beginning to be incorporated in everyday life. With Gen X, like every generation before, pretty much the only way to meet someone new to date was in person, face-to-face interaction, which also means your options for potential partners were pretty much limited to the city, state, province, or just the general area you were staying in at the time. Good news was that people were more out and about. You could meet and find a potential romance at the library, grocery store, park, social event, your high school or college class. Sometimes even an introduction from a friend of a friend, or your aunt introduces you to her cousin's neighbor's daughter or something, I don't know. Pretty much anywhere another person would be was the opportunity to find your future date. But the advantage that Gen X had over every generation previously was their availability of reach and options to meet a new partner. For example, did you know that people literally used to put ads in the newspapers searching for love? For a small fee, you could put a picture of yourself and a short description of who you are in your local singles magazine, and anyone who was interested could contact you. However, let's take it a step further with...
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I live in the West End Pretend Valley.
The type of girl that I'm looking for is one that's really attractive to me.
I am looking for a passionate yet permanent romance within the guidelines of safe dating practices.
In the 1980s, Gen Xers and baby boomers had access to VHS video dating services, which is a subscription where, for a fee, someone could sign up, record a video of themselves sharing their interest and what they look for in a partner, and they gain access to a VHS catalog of other eligible bachelors and bachelorettes, and choose who they want to match with. This was cool because not everyone had the time, skills, or the luck to meet someone that they would have liked face to face, and even better because it negates the need to live physically close to someone in order to find a date. The problem was, it was so expensive that it never caught on to the general public.
It's expensive, but after now that I've found Nicole, I mean, I couldn't put a price tag on it.
Speaking of expensive, have you ever just stopped dating for a period of time because you felt you needed to work on yourself financially and needed to be established before starting to look for a partner? Well, you're not alone, because Gen Xers coming of age in the 80s and 90s faced major job instability during recessions, making it more likely for a Gen Xer to forego dating for a little bit before trying to find a serious partner. Something boomers never really had to think about as they grew up in a booming economy. That being said, the economy wasn't the only thing that boomed for boomers. Divorce rates for adult baby boomers during the time Gen Xers would have been growing up is the highest of any generation to date. As you could imagine, many Gen Xers likely grew up with a sour outlook on love and commitment. The ideal that was ingrained in the silent generation of expecting to date for a marriage that lasts forever was crushed before Gen X could utter their first words. They learned that love could vanish as easily as it came, and that it's normal for a family to break apart. It's even crazier when you realize Gen X is also called the latchkey generation because they grew up usually being left alone at home. So Gen X were forced to learn how to be independent and now skeptical of love. So when they became old enough to start dating, it was likely they entered relationships fearing commitment or expecting that it would end at some point anyway. And this was reflected and even perpetrated by media at the time during the 80s and 90s. Kramer vs. Kramer, a movie about humanizing the reality of divorce, An Unmarried Woman, a movie about a woman's journey through self-discovery after her divorce, framing their separation as empowerment. Even in the 90s with shows like Seinfeld or Friends, normalized the idea of casual sex, dating around without wanting something long-term, breaking up and getting back together again constantly. You see, media took a great message showing that it's not the end of the world if the love you hoped for did not last, while at the same time bastardizing said message by showing people dating and sleeping around with no goal of long-term intimacy, leaving the dating scene for the most part unstable and unpredictable. But hey, if Gen X thought dating for their generation was unstable, hell, they're gonna have a heart attack when they find out about the yes, the 2000s to 2010s. Movie theaters, coffee shops, Netflix and chill. Hey, we in the age of the internet now. You already know what this section is going to be about, so don't even play. What is it that our parents always say? It's that damn phone. Yeah, for millennials, it probably was. Not to say that online dating took away or replaced the traditional way people met in person. People still met at bars, clubs, parties, the neighborhood, etc. But slowly, ever so slowly, especially towards the 2010s, did the internet and social media finally take its chokehold on dating. It all started with Match.com in 1995, which gained traction in the early 2000s for giving adults the option to create their own online dating profile and choose between tens of thousands of other users on the site to connect and go on a date with. Similar to VHS dating of the 80s, this was revolutionary because distance and right place, right time was less of a deciding factor when finding someone. I mean, think about it. Even if you lived within the same city, there isn't a guarantee that you would ever naturally run into the same people you could have otherwise matched with online. You could live 5 miles away, but work in different areas, go to different gyms, go to different social events entirely, essentially never crossing paths if you stuck to your normal routine. So the benefit millennials had with online dating that isn't really talked about, not only did it close distances, but most time you wouldn't have met the people you would have otherwise matched with. Also, you could meet new people quicker and multiple at once actually, especially as smartphones became a thing and more widely available. Dating apps like Tinder in 2012 and Bumble in 2014 hit the scene and introduced the swipe left, swipe right function, essentially keeping a straightforward approach. Social media was, of course, always an opportunity to meet people. You know what people had to do back in the day? Find the courage to physically walk up to someone, think of a pickup line to show romantic interest, and try your best to not look like a creep. But now, as a millennial, you can conjure up that same courage to slide into someone's Instagram DMs and kinda not look like a creep. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Technology made everything more streamlined, more convenient. Everyone found each other easier. Yeah, I don't see any qualms or foreseeable issues with this. Wait, what was I talking about again? I'll be honest, the topic of modern dating and its problems has been ran through the mud so many times. I'll do my best to explain concisely here, and then for Gen Z, I'll do my best to take a different approach. But yeah, dating for millennials from the 2010s onwards turned into a game, essentially, and a marketplace. For Gen X and pretty much every generation prior, the whole point of dating was to take the time to get to know someone. Even back then, when casual dating was on the rise, the caveat to that was that it still took the average person a while to even find someone they could casually date. It's not like you could walk in the mall, talk to the first person you see, and then start making out. But the issue when you combine a more casual / lack of commitment dating culture with a seemingly infinite choice to connect with anyone that you want at any time, the process for dating will be expedited. In general, people feel less of a need or desire to invest the time necessary to get to know someone first, because there will always be a feeling that they could just meet someone better. So the second something feels like it's going to take even a bit more effort than they'd like, it's easier just to call call it quits. And that in and of itself is a double-edged sword too. When you know you have so many potential options to choose from, no one actually feels quote unquote good enough, and you literally won't know until you meet up for a date, if it even gets that far. It's like, I get it. If you're on the dating apps, we all get the fatigue and frustration of consistently starting new conversations that seemingly go nowhere. Dry conversations, redundant pickup lines, etc., etc. And the irony is that since everyone feels it, more people lose faith and start putting less effort in those same conversations. But it is because everyone is putting less effort and feeling fatigued that those conversations end up dry to begin with. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in the dating app world. Also, it's like the apps themselves are out to get you. Like, what do you mean I have to pay $39.99 a month to have a better chance of finding someone? What do you mean Hinge purposely hides the people they algorithmically think you would be more attracted to behind a paywall? What do you mean there are people on the apps that will purposely lead you on in conversation with no intention of ever meeting up because they're bored, and you give them the validation they need because they know you find them attractive? I get it. You're a business. You need to make money. But golly, who gave you your business model, Mr. Krabs? But speaking of people needing validation, dating unfortunately did become more shallow over time for millennials compared to previous generations. I mean, to be fair, crazy beauty standards have always been a thing. This ain't an exclusive problem just because we have social media now. But now that we're inundated with so much choice and we can't get the same vibe check online as we could if we met someone in person, physical attraction is typically the only thing you have to go off of. And you have to pray that the other person is not a weirdo. It's just unfortunate that this constant connection without really going anywhere leaves a lot of people feeling emotionally exhausted and turned off from dating as a whole. It's like connections are disposable now. And speaking of connections being disposable, yes, the 2020s. Game nights, boba shops, ghosting and leading people on. Allegedly. Gen Z dating is in its own category because, yes, technically it's pretty much all the same problems millennials face, except to the 1/trillionth power. Now, to be clear, there is actually nothing wrong with casual dating on its own. You're an adult, you could do what you want. Not everything has to have an ultimate end goal. If you're not in the point in your life right now where you're willing to commit to something super serious, or you legitimately just want to have fun with someone new, you shouldn't have to put your dating life on pause just because you're not ready yet. Nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong with not being upfront with that though. I think the thing that sucks most about Gen Z dating, and the thing that gets blasted all over the internet, is usually one of three things. Someone wants a casual relationship with no labels attached. The other person wants something serious and makes that clear from the jump. But the person who wants it casual lies about their intentions because they don't want to let that person go. But now the person wanting something serious feels betrayed because it's been 6 months with no clear label or direction. Thinking things like, does this person not like me enough to want to be official? Am I wasting my time? Stuff like that. B, someone wants a casual relationship and they make it clear this time from the jump. But the other person secretly wants something serious and lies about it. Either lying to the other person, hoping if they see how cool they are, they'll change their minds eventually. They won't, by the way. Or lying to themselves, trying to convince themselves that they're okay with something like this, although subconsciously they know they aren't. Now both parties are confused, hurt, pointing fingers, saying things like, I thought we were together, and why are you making such a big deal? We already agreed we're not serious. And C, at least one or neither party knows what they want out of this dynamic, or even if they do know, it's never clearly communicated. You're just going off of vibes and assumptions, which isn't the end of the world, I guess, if you guys are just figuring it out as you go along. But it just sucks when you invest time into dating someone and then you later find out that you like something more than just casual hookups, only for the other person to conclude they actually prefer to not have labels, and then questions like, what are we, start popping up, and they keep avoiding it because they don't want to let a good thing go. Situationship is what the kids call it these days. Oh, and by the way, there are also people who lead you on, give you promises of the future, give you hope that one day it might lead to something more, you know, like a carrot on a stick. Yeah, we call those people psychopaths. No motive, no goal, just wasting your time for the love of the game. You know, the people that love the idea of being in a relationship but don't want to do the work to make one work, but also want the benefits of being single. You know the one. It's also unfortunately become normal to not only be unclear and not share your intentions up front, but because texting is a lot of Gen Z's primary way to communicate, It's also very easy to leave people high and dry in the middle of a conversation. Like most things, ghosting's not exclusive to Gen Z. Back in the day, you can meet someone in person, grab their number, plan a date, and literally never talk or hear from them again. But because dating has become more gamified thanks to dating apps and social media, we've built a habit of leaving conversations or situations that we feel in our gut won't go anywhere anyways. But instead of doing the noble thing and telling them directly, you just... I'm going ghost! This must come from a fear of confrontation or just overall believing that it's okay to treat another human being like this. But also it's worse when people do this knowing from the get-go they were gonna ghost you eventually anyway. Wow, you let someone on you knew from the jump you had no interest in, just so you can prove to yourself you're attractive enough to date them if you wanted? I hope the free ego boost was worth hurting someone else's feelings, George. I'd say there's just overall a fear of rejection on both ends, right? Like a fear of being rejected and doing the rejecting. Thanks to how easy it is to not have to talk to someone nowadays, coupled with the overall social anxiety of this generation. Yeah, literally over 60% of Gen Z report mental health challenges. And, overall the fear of not being seen as a creep, Gen Z men and women have stopped initiating or approaching people in person. The risk of embarrassment is just too high, I guess. But I don't blame that fear, or at least not completely, especially when, to some degree, everyone's brain is a victim of a social media algorithm. Red pill, black pill, blue pill, incel, femcel, red fish, blue fish, two fish, green eggs and ham. It's like everyone's a professional on dating, but also no one is? Unfortunately, it doesn't matter what your gender is. Imagine you're already at a low point, disillusioned by yet another failed dating attempt. You open up social media, mind you, you're not even looking for this, yet your algorithm is giving you reels and TikToks on why women are trash, why men suck, why modern dating sucks, why it's not just you, modern men, modern women, why dating gets worse every generation. Stupid videos like that. It's like you're consistently being inundated with constant feedback as to why the opposite sex sucks, and either why it's never your fault or why it's always your fault you can't find a partner. And all it's doing is attaching your frustration to a reason or solution that isn't accurate, when in reality the answer is always somewhere in the middle. All that to say, does Gen Z dating actually suck? Yes. I was talking for the past 25 minutes. Were you not paying attention? But there are some things to consider. Yes, you have to adapt in ways that other generations never had to because of technology, social media, etc., etc. But in my opinion, I think it's more accurate to say that times change, but people more or less stay the same. And dating problems aren't necessarily worse, but exchanged for something else. Did the silent generation have more structure and clearer intentions for dating? Yes, but they also didn't have the growing gender equalities and freedoms we have today. Did baby boomers approach people more often in person? Yes, but they don't have the reach we do today and the opportunities to meet someone new. Ghosting isn't unique to Gen Z. Unclear intentions isn't unique to Gen Z. Propaganda against the other sex isn't unique to Gen Z either. The only thing new is that, yes, it's more highlighted and easier because of social media, but let's not act like this wasn't already happening. It's like people watch a street interview and don't realize that the creator purposely chooses the worst of the worst for engagement and think that represents how an entire generation thinks about dating. How about instead of saying Gen Z dating is cooked or modern dating sucks, how about we say dating is hard? Full stop. Don't matter if you're the conventionally attractive girl who men only see as a trophy to prove to their friends they could sleep with someone who looks like you, and you have trouble finding someone who both has the courage to approach you and genuinely cares about you, or the guy or girl who generally has trouble finding a date to begin with. Maybe after so many failed attempts, you legitimately feel you're not attractive or appealing enough to be a dateable option. Or someone who generally keeps running into bad dates, ghosts, unclear intentions, people who want the best of both worlds when it comes to traditional values and modern day, but can't deliver on either. Everyone who's in a mode of actively dating or trying to date right now has their own experience. And it's obviously not fair to diminish how bad your personal experience is. So I won't. If you believe dating is worse today, backed by your own personal experience, your belief is valid. But I will say that you're not alone. Full stop.